Most people are like this. 95% of the world is stuck here. They hate themselves for not standing on their own 2 feet, while never realizing their legs were cut out from under them long ago. Most people live frozen, not by choice, but by a cocktail of guilt, fear, and unresolved emotional betrayal from childhood. They carry around a sense that something is inherently wrong with them, that they're not what or who they should be. They've internalized the failure of love as a flaw in their own being. They don't even realize that what they call love was often emotional manipulation, guilt projection, or spiritual confusion in disguise. And so they repress their truest feelings, especially hate, believing that to express them would make them bad or unworthy. But repressed hate becomes a poison, a silent force that distorts their relationships, their view of God, and their sense of self. Until someone can accept and express the full range of their feelings, especially the unacceptable ones, they cannot truly surrender to love. And this is the hidden trap. Most people were never allowed to feel their own emotions in a safe, non-judgmental way. Their body still holds the freeze of betrayal. Their mind still obeys the guilt of a childhood that demanded they protect the image of their caregivers instead of honoring their own truth. So they spiritualize their pain, or try to outperform it, or collapse under it. But the shame remains. And here's the tragedy. The child internalizes the parent's failure of love as if it were their own sin. And that's where the self-hate begins. That's where people get stuck. And that's where our journey of resurrection begins. Here's why the mind becomes twisted so early in life, and what no one realizes is still controlling them. Fear freezes the soul before the child even has words for what's happening. At the most tender stage of development, when a child is just beginning to feel and act from instinct, they're often met not with permission, but with punishment. Their rawest emotional truth, rage, pain, grief, even wild joy is seen as dangerous, so they learn to shut it down because the cost of expression is too high. Imagine being a small child who feels an intense surge of anger because of betrayal, abandonment, or injustice. And you're told that even feeling it is wrong, that to feel it might get you hurt, or worse, make you unlovable. So what do? They don't stop feeling it. They just stop showing it. They suppress the energy, but the body doesn't forget. The muscles lock, the breath shortens, and the soul gets stuck in that moment. And now, what should have passed like weather gets frozen in time. The child, now adult, remains psychologically fixated at the age of that original wound. This is why people can't move on, no matter how much they know better. Because the knowing is cerebral, but the trauma is cellular. And here's the heartbreaking twist. Children can't separate feeling from action. If they feel hate, they believe it means they are evil. If they think, I hate you, they believe they have committed murder in their soul. And unhealthy parents allow them to feel this way. This is the birth of unconscious guilt. This confusion is not the child's fault. It's the failure of the environment to help them hold complexity, to say, you're allowed to feel that. You're not bad for having that feeling. Let's find a way to move it through your body safely. Most never got that, so they stay stuck, locked in a childish mind that still believes, if I feel this, I must be bad. The mind becomes split from the body. The soul becomes trapped in the cage of moral terror, and the adult self becomes a manager of repressed feeling instead of a beautiful, integrated human being. Even now, many people still live under that old terror of being overwhelmed by their emotions, of becoming out of control. But what they're really afraid of is being seen in the feeling they were never allowed to have. This is why many adults still can't express anger fully. Their voice may shout, but their eyes stay dead. The energy doesn't reach the truth of their being. They say the words, I'm angry, but the body doesn't believe it. And this is why the soul never feels clean. Until we bring the energy back from the place it was frozen, until we feel what we were once forbidden to feel, we will live someone else's story haunted by unexpressed truth. When that energy is welcomed, the body becomes the voice of truth again. And in that reunion, resurrection begins. So let us look for a moment at why we stay stuck and what is the inner break that repeats the pain. As adults, our willpower to perform is strong, but the power to transform our inner state is weak. Most people are operating from a will that's been severed from the body. Their ego performs from a surface strength, but underneath, the body is stuck in the emotional imprints of the past. This memorized state formed in childhood becomes the default setting. Even the most determined intentions will fail if the body's emotional truth doesn't come with them. And this is the core conflict. The will can push forward, but the body pulls us back to where it got stuck. This is what's known as the repetition compulsion, a break in the personality that causes us to unconsciously repeat the same situations, dynamics, or self-sabotage. Why? Because the body is trying to return to the original moment it got hurt, hoping it will finally get unstuck. But the wound doesn't heal just by repeating the story. It heals by feeling what was never allowed to be felt. As long as the original break is unhealed, the needle of our life plays the same old thing, the same old record, over and over. Different faces, same feeling. A loop of fate disguised as free will. This is why success without self-possession feels hollow. Because the person inside is still trapped in an unresolved emotional identity, stuck trying to prove something that should have been lovingly affirmed long ago. For men, this often looks like trying to prove their manhood, driven by a hidden feeling of inadequacy. For women, it might look like seeking a father through seduction, wanting to be both desired and protected, adult and child. But these unconscious dynamics only deepen the original insecurity. The deeper truth, these aren't failures of will, they're symptoms of a soul frozen in time. Therapy, healing, and spiritual growth all come down to this, helping a person stop struggling against themselves. Real change doesn't come from force, it comes from self-acceptance, from seeing the frozen places not as flaws, but as moments of heartbreak that were never metabolized. Once accepted, the body's healing intelligence, its genius, kicks in. Like a cut that closes on its own, like a bone that mends. The body wants to restore itself, but neurosis, the struggle against fate, is like picking at the scab. We keep the injury alive through resistance. We cling to what hurt us most because on some deep level, we still think it defines us. Body remembers how to heal, but only if we stop using our will to resist our truth. So we must stop fighting ourselves and start witnessing what is. Because healing doesn't begin when we try to be better. Healing begins when we stop pretending we aren't already broken and begin to love the person who broke trying to survive. Body remembers the betrayal of love, and that's why joy feels unsafe. Hatred doesn't start as evil. It begins as frozen love, betrayed too soon. When a child opens their heart, when they offer their full being in trust, and that offering is met with coldness, judgment, or rejection, it doesn't just hurt. It creates a spiritual injury, a primal wound. The child cannot comprehend why love wasn't returned. So they internalize the pain as, there must be something wrong with me. Hate, then, is the soul's reaction to a sacred bond broken by someone they depended on completely. The betrayal is so deep that it causes the child to stop feeling altogether. Pain becomes frozen, and what could have been processed as grief or rage becomes muscle-bound guilt, inner paralysis, and lifelong compensation behaviors. Here's what happens. The child fails to match the parent's unconscious, idealized image of what they should be. The parent, feeling betrayed by this non-compliance, turns affection into hostility. The child, feeling this withdrawal, responds with fear and shame. A vicious cycle begins, and the child, now adult, becomes locked in a body that remembers everything. The most tragic betrayal is not what happened to us, but how we learned to betray ourselves to survive it. This is why most people can't feel good for long, why joy feels too much, why success feels unearned, and why love triggers fear. They haven't released the tension that still holds the memory of that early betrayal, and the body, still caught in the muscular contractions of that experience, won't let the joy in until the hate is felt, the guilt released, and the frozen energy discharged. This is not psychological theory. This is the soul's cry from the tissues of the flesh. I want to be free again. Abba, save me, Father. To heal this, we need intentional relationship with the body. We must go where the pain is stored, not just mentally remembered, but physically bound. That's what the genius of the body methodology is for. We work with the breath, the voice, the muscular armoring, and the spiritual energy of the person to safely and incrementally unlock the body, not just to feel better, but to become whole again. Because the body does not lie, and the body, when opened, remembers joy. This is the path of becoming truly alive, not bypassing the pain, but owning it, releasing it, and receiving the blessing on the other side. Freedom, self-possession, the return of joy. This is what Jesus meant when he said, by your endurance, you will gain your souls. To possess your soul means to reclaim the feeling life of your body and live fully again. No process is more holy than that. The map of the soul is this: reclaiming selfhood through the body. Once the body comes alive again, a person is no longer a puppet of their past. They become a person with a map. This map is not mental, it's not conceptual. It's embodied truth, etched in the nervous system through the realization of what was done, the release of what was trapped, and the resurrection of what was lost. Before this process, the person doesn't live their own life. They live their family's unresolved emotions on repeat. They carry someone else's guilt. They feel someone else's rage. They strive for someone else's approval, and they don't even know it. But when a person begins the genius of the body process, when the muscular tension begins to melt, when the breath deepens, and the body starts to feel safe again, they don't just feel better, they become real. They begin to feel their feelings, see their truth, and want their life. Now the score is settled. Not through revenge, but through embodiment. The truth of what in the inner self, once buried, rises. This is the moment a person begins to possess their soul. They can feel anger without needing to destroy. They can feel love without fearing betrayal. They can stand alone without collapsing in shame. They stop transmitting the emotional climate of their childhood because they've stepped out of it. They're no longer in the system. They see the system and they choose their way out. This is where self-respect is born, not from positive affirmations, but from the sacred act of no longer abandoning oneself. This is also when a person becomes trustworthy to others, not because they are perfect, but because they are anchored, rooted, alive from the inside out. They've developed an inner map of reality, not based on what they were told, but on what their body now knows to be true. This embodied map becomes their compass. So when the world pulls, they don't betray themselves. When manipulation arises, they see it clearly. When life gets uncertain, they stay grounded because the truth lives in their tissues. This is not just therapy, this is liberation. And from here, finally, love becomes safe because the self is home. This is the reward of the road less traveled, the narrow path that leads to the kingdom of heaven within, becoming more than you were. Every part of the body contributes to our sense of self if it is alive and mobile. And only when the body is alive, fully charged and connected to feeling, can we say we are truly alive. This is what the journey of embodiment leads to, not a better performance of life, but the full possession of life from the inside out. Through the genius of the body process, people come to discover that being, not doing, is what brings fulfillment. That feeling good in their body is not a luxury, but the very foundation of true individuality. They no longer confuse success with identity, nor ambition with aliveness. Realize that joy, vitality, and meaning come not from achievements, but from the deep pleasure of existing as oneself. This kind of fulfillment isn't shallow. It's not something that can be borrowed, copied, or inherited. It is earned through the courage to feel everything, and through the surrender of ego control back into the divine rhythms of the body. This is the moment someone stops seeking their identity through others and begins living from their subjective truth. They no longer posture, they no longer perform, they feel, and from that feeling, they live. This is how true individuals are made, not through rebellion, not through style, but through the reclamation of their body's wisdom, through letting life flow through them again. You can feel it when you're around someone like this. They don't need to convince you of their worth. Their aliveness speaks for them. Their presence gives you permission to be more yourself. They radiate pleasure. They feel good in their own skin, and so you feel good around them too. This is what every soul is longing for beneath the noise, to come home to itself, to feel without fear, to be without guilt, to love without shame. This is what the gospel of embodiment points to. This is what Christ came to restore, a humanity alive again in God, beginning in the flesh. The reward of this path is not just insight, but transformation, a deep inner shift into essence. A person emerges who is not who they were, not in performance or posture, but in actual feeling and presence. They know who they are because they feel their body. They trust their life because they trust their feelings. They walk in freedom because they've been made whole from the inside out. That is the new creation in Christ. Not a theology, a living soul, rooted in joy, radiating love, not striving to belong, but being the invitation. You were never broken. Your body just froze to survive. Now it's time to thaw. If this message stirred something in you, let it matter. Hit subscribe, tap the like button, and share in the comments what spoke to you most. Because this is just the beginning of what it means to come alive again, body, soul, and spirit. Let's walk this journey of resurrection together.